We're now introducing the Amiga Dashboard. The dashboard is the manual control through the CAN bus that allows electricity to flow. It's also the mechanism by which we allow the brain autonomy to take over the Amiga. And it's also where the pendant is attached that manually controls the movement of the Amiga if you need to. There's also the e-stop. Now the e-stop should only be hit when when the Amiga is on level ground, because it just turns off electricity to the wheels. It doesn't break anything. So you have to be aware, if you're going to stop it with a load on a hill, it's going to start rolling backwards. If you're starting up the robot, what you should do is, it's generally best practice to just hit the e-stop button, then go over and turn the battery key parallel to the ground. That's clockwise, one click. And then wait a little while and we start the boot up sequence. Now we're in the boot up sequence. Remember, I put it in e-stop. If I press the little start button, it'll come with this splash page, because it doesn't release e-stop until you say, it's kind of like, are you sure? So yes, we're sure. Now I can release e-stop. Screen will come up, are you sure again? And we're ready to roll. This is the odometer screen. Basically, we have this dial that sets the maximum speed of the robot, and you can see that you can set it to max, which is about 5.5 miles an hour, all the way back down to 0. And that just constrains, like in a closed environment, you want to set the maximal speed slower. You set it according to your situation. Here we have a numerical readout of the speed. On the left are the different screens that we'll go through in turn. On the right are the battery state, it's a little less than half here. The average temperature of the motors, it's in the good section. And then the wheel state, green means they're good. If I turn on the e-stop, okay, the e-stop splash screen comes up, remove it. You can see now all the motors are off. And releasing the e-stop by clockwise, get rid of the "are you sure" splash screen. And now the wheels are green again. So that's the dash screen. Okay, the next icon is this temperature symbol. It's really meant to be system state. So you get these 4 boxes. Each one represents a motor. A green state means it's on. So within each box, it has the voltage, its rotation, the temperature, and how many amps it's getting. They're in the spatial order of the robot, so as it's going forward. So top left represents the front left, bottom left represents the back left, top right represents the forward right tire, and the bottom right represents the back right tire. If I turn on the e-stop, so I slam this, clear the splash screen, you'll see the motors are off. And you'll see on the top is the state of things, so the e-stop is on. When I release it, the splash screen comes up, clear it. Now it's in an active state. You can also see when you turn it on to the brain, then the auto active will be on. When you turn it in cruise mode, the little X on the pendant, then the cruise will be on. When it's e-stop, you saw that it was on. On the right is the CAN bus state, so it usually should be active, and that means messages are passing between the motors and back to the central processor, and that's the screen. So now we go on to this A symbol. That's the automation screen. This screen is how you give control over to the brain box. So usually you're in a manual control. You have to click this button and control will go over. It says auto ready. Now the brain is in control of the system. These 2 dials here, the top needle means that's in the 0 position. So the first one is speed. It's right now at 0. The red number means that's what the system is commanding the robot to do, and the black arrow is the measurement. The black numbers are the measurement numbers. So here it's 0 command and 0 speed, good. The left one is the speed, so if we're going backwards, it'll be to the left. If we're going forward, it'll be to the right, the needle, and the numbers tell how fast. The right dial is the turning rate, and so left is left, right is right, and again, the red is the commanded turn, and the black numbers are how fast it's turning. So I can now turn this off, and that's the auto control screen. And finally, we go into the settings screen with the traditional setting symbol. So the settings screen shows 6 of these circles. 4 of them are populated right now. The first one is system parameters that you can set and change. The pendant one has to do with pendant calibration. The actuator one is if you have a tool attached to the robot, that will set up that tool. Typically, say it's a 3-point hitch, then the pendant will be active, and let's say 3-point hitch has up and down. And then, so that actuator's there. The ID button is where you get the ID of the system, so you'll get the serial code of the robot, you'll get the firmware number, and other information about the robot. First, we'll look at the settings circle. And so you see a whole bunch of settings on a scrollable list. The first, there's mainly just maybe 2 that you should focus on. One of which is if you happen to set the robot at a different width with the physical width, you enter it here. So right now this one's set at 48 inches, but if you do it smaller or larger, you should reflect that here. The other one is flip joystick. And so usually when you're going forward with the joystick toggle, it'll just go forward. But sometimes you're sitting or there's a seat and it's going the other way. And you can use this to flip the sense of the pendant so that you can go other ways. Next, we're going to go into the pendant. So here, I'm going to e-stop it so that we don't actually move the robot when this is happening. Again, e-stop, clear it. And now you can see this will reflect the movement of the e-stop. It'll also reflect the buttons on the e-stop. As you can see, that's brake. So that'll stop the robot, pause it. It'll pause whatever the robot's doing. This sets cruise control. The triangle sets power takeoff, and that sets it so that if you have actuation attached to the machine, that you can then actuate it using these arrows usually. And so, obviously we have up, down, left, right, and that's the calibration, pendant calibration screen. Okay, at bottom there's the actuator control, and this button depends on, right, this particular robot doesn't have an actuator, but this is if you have a tool that's doing power takeoff, PTO, then this will be the connection to that tool so that you can control the tool. And once you do, typically you link the tool to the arrow buttons. So for instance, the 3-point hitch, there's up and down. This is how you'd access that and control it. And now we have the ID circle, so tapping that. Above you can see the actual serial number for this tractor. So if you need to refer to that, this is where you find it. It's in the ID under settings. And there's the firmware version. So if you have a problem, you're reporting it, go here and make sure you tell us what the firmware is that you have. And then there's an update app. So this is how you update the firmware over the air. I'll just go through a little of it. Okay, it takes a while. So then it boots up and you get to this screen, so you have to wait a little while as it reboots. And you can see you can connect to your Wi-Fi or return to the dashboard. And then it shows you which versions you have. There's an updater, which is the actual software that gets the updates. And then there's the version that's on your system. So if you want to upgrade or downgrade a version, this is how you would get into setting the tractor up to do that. But I'm just going back to the dashboard, and yes, return to the dashboard. It'll go through its little power cycle and boot up again. And you're back to the start screen.